The silence in the church is a living thing. It has weight. It presses down on my shoulders, heavier than the cathedral train of my wedding dress. 200 pairs of eyes are on me, but I only see him. Liam. My Liam. Standing at the altar, his smile so perfect, so practiced, it could be carved from marble. He looks like the answer to a prayer I forgot I'd made. He's handsome, of course. That's the first thing everyone notices. But it's the light in his eyes, that specific glint of adoration he reserves just for me, that's always been my undoing. It's there now, shining, and it's a lie. The air is thick with the scent of lilies and old wood, and the collective held breath of our family and friends. To my left, Chloe shifts her weight. The blush-colored silk of her bridesmaid dress whispers against the stone floor. My best friend. My maid of honor. Her hand finds mine, a small, reassuring squeeze. Her skin is warm. I feel nothing but a deep, arctic cold. The priest clears his throat, his voice echoing slightly in the vaulted space. And does anyone here present know of any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony? It's a formality, a theatrical pause in the ceremony that no one ever answers. The silence stretches, comfortable for everyone else. For me, it's a tightrope. Liam winks at me, a playful, secret gesture between us. It feels like a slap. My heart isn't beating. It's counting down. 3,
2, 1.
My hand, hidden in the folds of my dress, tightens around my phone. My thumb hovers over the screen. This is it.
The point of no return.
I can either swallow the acid in my throat and say, I do, chaining myself to this beautiful, hollow man. Or I can burn it all down. His world. Her world. My world. All of it, reduced to ash. His smile wavers for a fraction of a second, a flicker of confusion in his eyes.
He can feel it.
The shift in the air. The storm that's about to break. If you've ever stood at a crossroads like this, a moment where your entire life splits into a before and an after, tell me about it in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story already feels like it's a part of you, please subscribe. It means more than you know. 12 months ago, this was just a dream. A beautiful, hazy fantasy I sketched out in notebooks. I was a wedding dress designer. Not a famous one. Not yet, but I had a small boutique, a loyal clientele, and a love for lace and impossible happy endings. I spent my days surrounded by love stories, stitching pearls onto bodices for other women's perfect days. I was the architect of fairy tales, living vicariously through tulle and silk. I wasn't unhappy, but there was a quiet ache of loneliness that settled in late at night, after the last bride had gone home, her face glowing. I wanted my own story. Then Liam walked into my life. Or rather, I walked into his. It was a coffee shop, one of those ridiculously cliché meet-cuties that you only see in movies. I was wrestling with a roll of sketches, it slipped, and blueprints for a dozen dream dresses unfurled across the floor. He was the one who knelt to help me, his hands careful as he gathered the pages. He didn't just hand them back.
He looked at them.
Really looked. These are beautiful, he'd said, his voice a low, warm hum. You're incredibly talented. He wasn't talking about my looks. He was talking about my work, my soul. And just like that, I was hooked. He was a financial advisor, dealing in a world of numbers and logic that was the complete opposite of my own.
He said he loved that about me.
He called me his beautiful, chaotic artist. Our first date lasted 8 hours. We talked about everything and nothing. His childhood in the Midwest, my obsession with vintage fabrics. We fell into step with each other so easily, it felt less like getting to know someone and more like remembering them. He proposed 6 months later, on the anniversary of our coffee shop meeting. He'd rented out the entire place, filled it with candles, and knelt on the very spot where my sketches had scattered. He didn't have a ring. Instead, he held up a small, empty velvet box. I know a ring is something you'd want to design yourself, he said. But I need the hand to put it on. Amelia, will you build your life with me? I was a puddle of tears and bliss. The days that followed were a whirlwind of joy. We found the perfect venue, a restored 19th century manor with sprawling gardens. I started designing my own dress, the most ambitious and personal project of my life. My parents were thrilled. His parents, who I'd only met a few times, seemed equally pleased. Everything was perfect, almost too perfect. That's when Chloe appeared. Liam introduced us. "This is Chloe," he announced one evening, walking into our apartment with her in tow. Her company just transferred her to our office. I told her I'd show her around the city, and I figured who better to help with that than my brilliant fiancé? She was stunning, in that effortless way I'd always envied. Tall, blonde, with a laugh that could fill a room. She was also charming. She gushed over my dress sketches, asked all the right questions about my work, and seemed genuinely fascinated by the life I'd built. She and I clicked instantly. Or so I thought. Looking back, it was less of a click and more of a carefully sprung trap. "You two are going to be best friends. I can feel it," Liam said, beaming. He was so proud, like he'd just introduced a kitten to a puppy and they'd started cuddling. He was right. Chloe became my shadow. She was there for every cake tasting, every floral appointment, every venue visit. When my maid of honor, my sister, had to bow out due to a high-risk pregnancy, Chloe was the obvious, immediate replacement. She stepped in so seamlessly, taking over duties, organizing my bridal shower, calming my nerves. She was the perfect friend. She'd listen for hours as I obsessed over color palettes and seating charts. She'd bring wine over when Liam had to work late, which seemed to be happening more and more often. "Big project at work," he'd say, kissing my forehead. "It'll all be worth it after the wedding, I promise." I believed him. I believed all of it. I was living inside my own fairy tale, the one I'd been designing for years. I was so busy stitching the seams of my perfect life together that I never once thought to check the integrity of the thread. The first loose thread appeared on a Tuesday. It was 3 weeks before the wedding. The apartment was a chaotic explosion of RSVPs, favor boxes, and tulle. Liam was supposedly at the gym. I was looking for the car keys to run to my studio when I checked his gym bag. Tucked into a side pocket, beneath a damp towel that smelled of chlorine and cheap deodorant, was a phone. Not his sleek, new smartphone. This was a cheap, plastic burner phone. The kind you see in spy movies. A cold prickle of unease traced its way down my spine. It was probably a work thing. A client who wanted extra privacy. Liam handled big accounts. It made a strange kind of sense. But I couldn't shake the feeling of wrongness. My hand trembled as I picked it up. The screen lit up. No password. Or rather, no lock screen. It opened right up to the home screen. There were only 2 apps on it. Messages and call logs. My heart started to pound, a frantic, trapped bird against my ribs. "This is insane, Amelia."
Put it back.
"You trust him. You love him. Trust is the foundation of everything." But my fingers had a will of their own. I opened the messages. There was only one contact. See, the messages went back for months. My breath hitched. I started scrolling, my eyes flying over the words, but my brain refusing to process them. "See, he's working late again tonight." "Liam, big project, she buys it every time." "See, my poor, trusting little lamb." My vision blurred. I sank to the floor, the gym bag slumping beside me. The room felt like it was tilting, the floor unstable beneath me. I kept reading. Every message was a shard of glass in my heart.
They talked about me.
They mocked my excitement over the wedding, my passion for my work. They talked about the wedding itself as a finish line. "See, not much longer now. Can you handle another 3 weeks of playing house?" "Liam, I can handle anything knowing you're waiting for me. After we're married, we'll have access to her family's money, her dad's inheritance. Then we can really start our life." See, our life. I like the sound of that. The words swam before my eyes. Our life. Her family's money. It wasn't just an affair. It was a plan.
Alon con.
I was the mark. My love, my trust, my future, it was all just collateral in their scheme. My stomach churned, and I barely made it to the bathroom before I was sick. I knelt on the cold tile, shaking, the burner phone clutched in my hand like a venomous snake. But the worst was yet to come. I navigated back to the home screen, my thumbs shaking so badly it took 3 tries to open the call log. There were dozens of calls to and from C and voicemails.
6 of them.
My finger hovered over the first one. I knew I shouldn't. I knew this would break me in a way I could never be unbroken. I pressed play. Her voice filled the small bathroom, bubbly and bright. Chloe's voice. Hey you. Just calling to hear your voice. I'm sitting here with Amelia, looking at seating charts.
God, she's so earnest.
It's almost painful to watch. She's debating whether to put your Aunt Carol next to her cousin from Philly. It's adorable. Anyway, I'm wearing that little black dress you like so much under my jeans.
Just thought you should know.
Call me when you ditch the bridezilla. A soft, throaty laugh. Then a click. My world didn't just tilt. It shattered. The floor fell away, and I was plummeting through an endless, black void.
Chloe.
My maid of honor. My confidant. My friend. C was Chloe. It was so obvious, so sickeningly, brutally obvious, and I had never seen it. They hadn't just betrayed me. They had orchestrated a masterpiece of deceit, with me as the clueless star. I played the next voicemail. And the next. Each one was a new circle of hell. Their pillow talk. Their plans. Their laughter at my expense. They weren't just cheating. They were reveling in it. They were enjoying the performance, the sheer audacity of their deception. The last voicemail was from Liam. Hey, C. Just left the cake tasting. So much buttercream. I think I'm going to be sick. Amelia was in heaven, though. She had this little smudge of frosting on her nose. She looked like a kid. Sometimes I almost feel bad. But then I think about you and I think about us, and I know this is the only way. We're so close. I love you. I love you. 3 words. The same 3 words he'd whispered to me in bed that morning. The phone slipped from my grasp and clattered against the tile. The sound was like a gunshot in the silence. I sat there on the cold bathroom floor for what felt like hours. The initial shock gave way to a wave of grief, so profound it felt like a physical weight, crushing the air from my lungs. The man I was going to marry, the life I was so carefully building, it was all a lie. A meticulously crafted, cruel illusion. When I finally heard his key in the door, I moved on autopilot. I splashed cold water on my face, shoved the burner phone deep into my own purse, and walked out of the bathroom, arranging my features into a mask of normalcy. Hey, you're back, I said, my voice sounding impossibly light, impossibly cheerful. It was the best performance of my life. He smiled, dropping his gym bag. The same bag. Hey, baby. How was your day? He wrapped his arms around me, pulling me into a hug. His shirt smelled of sweat and Chloe. I didn't flinch. I hugged him back. And as I rested my head on his chest, listening to the steady, lying beat of his heart, a new feeling began to crystallize amidst the wreckage of my own. It wasn't sadness. It was rage. A cold, quiet, calculating rage. He thought I was a lamb. They both did. They had no idea I was a wolf. And I was going to let them lead me all the way to the altar. The next 3 weeks were a masterclass in self-control. I lived a double life. By day, I was Amelia, the blissful, slightly stressed bride-to-be, finalizing details, fielding calls from relatives, and glowing with anticipation. By night, I was a ghost, haunting my own life. I'd wait until Liam was asleep, his slow, even breaths filling the room, and I would slip out of bed. I'd sit in the dark of the living room, the burner phone in my hand, and listen to the voicemails again and again. It was a form of self-flagellation, each word a lash of a whip, reminding me why I couldn't break. I needed the pain. I needed the anger. It was the fuel that kept me going. Every interaction with Liam was a performance. I'd kiss him goodbye in the morning, my stomach twisting into knots. I'd listen to him talk about our future, our honeymoon in Italy, the kids he wanted to have, and I would smile and nod, play my part. I became an expert at reading the space between his words, and noticing the slight hesitation before he said, "I love you." The way his eyes would flicker towards his phone when a text came in. I saw everything now. The web of their lies was no longer invisible. It was a shimmering, ugly tapestry that covered every surface of our lives. Chloe was even harder. She was my constant companion. We had our final dress fitting together. She stood behind me, adjusting the train of my gown, her reflection next to mine in the triple mirror. "Oh, Amelia," she breathed, her eyes wide with what looked like genuine awe. "You are the most beautiful bride I have ever seen. Liam is going to lose his mind." I met her eyes in the mirror. "You think so?" I asked, my voice steady. "I know so," she said, squeezing my shoulders. Her touch felt like a brand. "You two are perfect for each other. Soulmates." I held her gaze, a small, cold smile on my lips. "I'm so lucky to have you as my friend, Chloe. I couldn't have done any of this without you." The lie tasted like ash in my mouth, but she bought it completely. She beamed, her face a perfect picture of supportive friendship. The sheer audacity of it left me breathless. The bridal shower she threw for me was the pinnacle of this surreal theater. It was held in a chic downtown restaurant, all champagne and pastel-colored macarons. My mother was there, my aunts, my cousins, my friends from college. They all watched as Chloe gave a gushing toast to me and Liam. "To Amelia," she said, raising her glass. "The kindest, most talented, and most loving person I know. Seeing her so happy with Liam has been one of the great joys of my life. They are a true testament to what love can be. I can't wait to stand by your side as you marry the man of your dreams." Applause filled the room. My mother was crying. I was smiling, a fixed, brittle thing that felt like it might crack my face in two. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up on the table and play the voicemails right then and there. I wanted to watch the mask of perfection melt from her face and reveal the ugly truth beneath. But I didn't. It wasn't time. My plan required patience. It required the grandest stage possible. My plan began to form in the dark, silent hours of the night. At first, my only thought was to cancel. To call the whole thing off, expose them, and retreat to lick my wounds. But the more I thought about it, the more unsatisfying that felt. Why should I be the one to slink away in shame? Why should I be the one to lose the hundreds of thousands of dollars we'd spent on non-refundable deposits? Why should they be allowed to just walk away from the wreckage and start their life together, funded by my family's money?
No.
That wasn't justice. Justice required a reckoning. A public one. The wedding they were using as a finish line for their con would be a finish line, all right. But not for them. My first call was to a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but the most ruthless divorce attorney in the city, a woman known as the Shark. I met her in a discreet office that smelled of lemon polish and victory. I didn't tell her my plan, not all of it. I just laid out the facts. The burner phone. The texts. The voicemails. I played one for her. She listened, her face impassive. When it was over, she simply said, "Fraud. This is a classic case of marriage fraud. His intent was to marry you for financial gain under false pretenses. Her involvement makes her a co-conspirator." She explained the legal ramifications, the possibility of not just annulling the marriage, but suing them both for damages. Emotional distress. The full cost of the wedding. Everything. "The evidence is compelling," she said, her eyes gleaming. "Especially the voicemails. But we need to be smart about this." That's when I told her the rest of the plan. About the wedding day. About the ceremony. She was silent for a long moment, tapping a pen against her desk. I thought she was going to tell me I was crazy. Instead, a slow smile spread across her face. "It's unorthodox," she said. "But I like it. It's clean.
Public.
There will be 200 witnesses to their admission of guilt. Their reactions will be everything." We spent the next week preparing. She drew up the paperwork. A petition for annulment on the grounds of fraud and a civil lawsuit naming both Liam and Chloe. She would attend the wedding, dressed as a guest, a distant cousin from my mother's side. She would have the papers with her, ready to serve. My next step was the audio. The voicemails on the burner phone were clear, but I wanted them to be pristine. I took the phone to a sound engineer I knew, a guy who usually worked on indie films. I told him it was for a creative project. He cleaned up the audio, removing any background noise, and amplified their voices so they would be crystal clear when played over a speaker system. He sent me the final files, a series of MP3s that sounded like they'd been recorded in a professional studio. They were damning. The final piece was the delivery system. I couldn't just hold my phone up to the priest's microphone. It had to be seamless. I called the wedding planner and told her I had a surprise for Liam. A special audio tribute. I told her it was a montage of clips from our family and friends wishing us well, and I wanted it to play right after the priest asked the big question. She thought it was a wonderfully romantic idea. She arranged to have a small, powerful Bluetooth speaker hidden in the large floral arrangement at the front of the altar. She showed me how to connect my phone to it discreetly. Everything was falling into place. But living with the plan was a unique kind of torture. The closer the day got, the more the doubt crept in. There were moments, fleeting and terrible, where I'd see the man I fell in love with. He'd make me laugh with a stupid joke, or he'd look at me across a crowded room with an expression that felt so real, so genuine, that my resolve would waver. Was I making a mistake? Was I about to destroy 3 lives, including my own, over something that could be handled differently? The night of our rehearsal dinner was the worst. It was at our favorite Italian restaurant. Both our families were there, mingling, laughing. Liam stood up to give a speech. He talked about the first time he saw me, about how he knew in that moment that his life had changed forever. He looked at me, his eyes glistening. "Amelia," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You are my beginning, my middle, and my end. I can't wait to spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of you." People were dabbing their eyes. My own father was beaming with pride. I felt a wave of nausea, so intense I had to grip the edge of the table. He was so good. He was a phenomenal actor. Or maybe a small, treacherous part of my brain whispered, maybe he means it. Maybe the affair with Chloe is a mistake, a moment of weakness, and he really does love you. I excused myself and went to the restroom. I splashed cold water on my face, staring at my reflection in the mirror. My eyes were wide with a desperate, hunted look. "You're weak," I told myself. "Don't you dare fall for it now. Remember what they said. Remember what they planned." As I walked back towards the main dining room, I heard their voices coming from a small alcove near the kitchen. Liam and Chloe. They were talking in low, urgent whispers. I flattened myself against the wall, holding my breath. "Getting cold feet?" Chloe hissed. "You can't be, Liam."
Not now.
"We're almost there." "I'm not," he said, his voice strained. "It's just tonight, seeing her with her family. Her dad pulled me aside, told me he's setting up a trust for us as a wedding gift. A substantial one. It feels different now. It feels real." "Of course it's real," she snapped. "It's real money. Money that will get us out of here, away from all of this. A new start. That's what you wanted, isn't it?" "That was the plan." There was a pause. "Don't forget the plan, Liam. Don't you dare forget me." "I won't," he whispered. "I just need this to be over. One more day. Then it's you and me." I heard the soft sound of a kiss. I didn't need to see it. I could feel it. The final, definitive nail in the coffin of my doubt. I pushed myself off the wall and walked back to the table, my spine straight, my heart encased in ice. The wavering was gone. The weakness was gone. All that was left was the cold, hard certainty of what I had to do. I sat down next to Liam, took his hand, and smiled at him. "That was a beautiful speech, my love," I said. He squeezed my hand, a look of relief washing over his face. He had no idea he was holding the hand of his executioner. The morning of the wedding was surreal. The bridal suite at the manor was filled with a strange, buzzing energy. Mimosas were flowing. A makeup artist was dabbing concealer under my eyes, and my bridesmaids were flitting around me like a flock of nervous, excited birds. And in the center of it all was Chloe, playing the part of the perfect maid of honor. She steamed my veil. She helped me into my dress, her fingers cool and steady on the long row of silk-covered buttons down my back. She held my hands when a wave of what everyone assumed were happy tears threatened to spill over. "Deep breaths, sweetie," she whispered, her face close to mine. "This is the first day of the rest of your life. You've got this." The irony was so thick, I could have choked on it. I just nodded, letting her believe her own lies. As we stood waiting for the signal to walk down the aisle, she gave me one last hug. "I am so happy for you," she said into my ear. And for a wild, insane second, I almost felt sorry for her. She had no idea that she was a dead woman walking. Walking down the aisle on my father's arm felt like an out-of-body experience. I could see the faces of our guests turning towards me, their expressions a mix of smiles and happy tears. I saw my mother in the front row, clutching a handkerchief, her face a mask of pure joy. And then I saw Liam, waiting for me at the altar. And the illusion shattered. All I could see was the lie. The handsome face, the loving smile. It was all a costume. My father kissed my cheek and placed my hand in Liam's. His skin was warm and steady. Mine was ice cold. We turned to face the priest, and the ceremony began. The words washed over me, a meaningless drone. I was hyper-aware of everything else. The way Chloe kept smoothing down her dress. The slight tremor in Liam's hand. The weight of the phone in the secret pocket I had sewn into the seam of my dress. We exchanged the rings. His slid onto my finger, cold and heavy. A shackle. When I put his ring on his finger, our eyes met. I let my mask slip for just a second, letting him see the coldness, the emptiness there. A flicker of confusion crossed his face, but it was gone as quickly as it came. He just thought it was nerves. Then came the moment. The priest smiled benevolently. "I now pronounce you." "Wait," I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the expectant silence like a knife. The priest stopped, his mouth half open. Liam looked at me, his brow furrowed in concern. "Amelia? What is it?" "Before we finish," I said, turning to face our guests. I pulled the phone from my dress. "I have something I'd like to share." Liam thought he was the only one who liked to make speeches. "But I've prepared something, too." A nervous titter went through the crowd. They thought it was a sweet, quirky surprise. Liam's expression relaxed into an indulgent smile. He thought he knew me so well. I took a deep breath. My fingers were surprisingly steady as I swiped the screen and tapped the Bluetooth icon. A small, almost imperceptible chime echoed from the floral arrangement, signaling the connection. No one noticed. I opened the audio file, and I pressed play. The first voice that filled the cavernous church was Chloe's. Bubbly, bright, and utterly damning. "Hey you. Just calling to hear your voice. I'm sitting here with Amelia, looking at seating charts. God, she's so earnest. It's almost painful to watch." A collective gasp rippled through the church. I watched Chloe's face. The color drained from it in an instant. Her smile froze, then crumbled. Her eyes, wide with horror, darted from the speaker to my face. She knew that voice. She knew that call. I kept my eyes locked on Liam. His smile had vanished, replaced by a mask of pure, uncomprehending shock. He looked at Chloe, then back at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. The recording continued. "She's debating whether to put your Aunt Carol next to her cousin from Philly. It's adorable. Anyway, I'm wearing that little black dress you like so much under my jeans. Just thought you should know. Call me when you ditch the bridezilla." Her throaty little laugh echoed off the stone walls, grotesque and loud in the horrified silence. My mother was on her feet, her hand covering her mouth. My father looked like he'd been turned to stone. In the back, I saw my lawyer, the shark, watching the scene unfold with a calm, predatory stillness. I didn't stop there. I let the next voicemail play. Liam's voice, this time. Warm. Intimate. "Hey, C.
Just left the cake tasting.
So much buttercream. I think I'm going to be sick. Amelia was in heaven, though. She had this little smudge of frosting on her nose. She looked like a kid. I saw a flicker of hope in his eyes. Maybe he could explain this away. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Then came the rest. Sometimes I almost feel bad. But then I think about you and I think about us and I know this is the only way. We're so close. I love you. I love you. The words hung in the air, an indictment and a confession. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a grave. Every guest was frozen, their faces a gallery of shock, pity, and disgust. Liam's parents looked like they wanted the floor to swallow them whole. Chloe was openly sobbing now, her shoulders shaking, her perfect makeup running in black streaks down her face. But Liam just stared at me. The confusion in his eyes had been replaced by a dawning, sickening understanding.
He finally saw me.
Not the sweet, naive artist he thought he was playing for a fool. He saw the woman who had just dismantled his entire life in front of 200 people. And then the rage hit him. It was a physical transformation. His face contorted, turning a blotchy, furious red. "You," he hissed, his voice a low, venomous growl. "You psycho. You did this? You planned this?" "I did," I said, my voice calm and clear. "I planned it all." And that's when he screamed. It wasn't a word. It was a raw, primal sound of pure, unadulterated fury and humiliation. It ripped through the sacred silence of the church, a sound of an animal caught in a trap of its own making. He lunged for my phone, but my father, finally snapping out of his shock, stepped between us, a solid wall of paternal fury. "Get away from my daughter," my dad growled, his voice a low thunder. But I wasn't finished. I had one more recording to play. I let my thumb slide to the last file. The one from the rehearsal dinner. Chloe's voice, sharp and panicked, filled the church. "Getting cold feet? You can't be Liam."
"Not now."
"We're almost there." And then Liam's reply. Her dad pulled me aside, told me he's setting up a trust for us as a wedding gift. A substantial 1 inch. My father's head whipped around to look at Liam, his eyes blazing with a new, more personal level of fury. The betrayal was no longer just about love. It was about cold, hard cash. It was about my family. Chloe's voice came again, cementing their fate. "Of course it's real. It's real money. Money that will get us out of here, away from all of this. A new start. That's what you wanted, isn't it?" The plan. The trust fund. The con. It was all laid bare. There was no ambiguity. No room for excuses or explanations. It was the truth, in their own words, for everyone to hear. Liam stopped screaming. He just stood there, breathing hard, his chest heaving. He looked cornered.
Trapped.
He opened his mouth to say something, to defend himself, to lie one more time, but no words came out. He had nothing left. And that's when my lawyer made her move. She glided down the aisle, her heels clicking purposefully on the stone floor. She looked like the angel of death in a chic designer suit. She stopped in front of Liam, who was still staring at me, his eyes filled with a helpless, venomous hatred. "Liam Maxwell," she said, her voice crisp and professional. He didn't respond. "You've been served." She pushed a thick manila envelope into his chest. He flinched as if it had burned him. She then turned to Chloe, who was huddled by the altar, a weeping, pathetic mess. "Chloe Peters? You've been served as well." She dropped a second envelope at Chloe's feet. Liam looked down at the papers in his hand, his eyes scanning the first page.
I saw the moment he understood.
The moment he realized this wasn't just public humiliation. This wasn't just a canceled wedding. This was a lawsuit. For fraud. For conspiracy. For every single penny spent on this sham of a wedding, and then some. This was ruin. He looked up at me, his face pale, his eyes wide with a new kind of terror. The rage was gone, replaced by the stark, cold fear of a man who had just lost everything. He had gambled, and he had lost in the most spectacular way imaginable. He thought he was playing me, but he had been my pawn all along. He had walked willingly into my trap, dressed in his finest tuxedo, with a smile on his face. The screams had been satisfying, but this silent, soul-crushing defeat on his face? This was victory. The aftermath was a blur of controlled chaos. My mother and father flanked me, a protective barrier as they ushered me down the side aisle and out a back door, away from the cacophony of gasps, whispers, and the first few frantic phone calls from guests to those not in attendance. I didn't look back. I didn't need to see the fallout. I could feel it, a shockwave of scandal and shattered reputations radiating out from the church. We got into the waiting limo, the one that was supposed to take me and Liam to our reception. The driver, a man with kind eyes and an impeccably discreet demeanor, simply closed the partition without a word. My father told him a new address, my address, the apartment I was about to have all to myself. I sat between my parents, my enormous white dress filling the car. My mother held my hand, her grip tight and grounding. My father stared out the window, his jaw set like granite. No one spoke. There was nothing to say. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was clean, empty. When we got to my apartment, I walked through the door, and the first thing I saw was a framed photo of me and Liam on the entryway table. We were laughing, his arms wrapped around me, the picture of happiness. I walked over, picked it up, and calmly dropped it into the trash can. My mother watched me, a sad, proud smile on her face. The next few days were quiet. My family acted as a buffer, fielding calls, managing the fallout, and protecting me from the world. The story, of course, went viral in our social circle. My phone buzzed incessantly with texts of support, of shock, of morbid curiosity. I turned it off. I didn't need their validation or their pity. The annulment was swift. With 200 witnesses and their own recorded confessions, Liam and Chloe had no legal leg to stand on. They didn't even fight it. The civil suit was a different matter, but my lawyer was, as her reputation suggested, a shark. She tore them apart. Presented with the evidence and the threat of further legal action for wire fraud, they settled. They had to liquidate everything. Liam lost his job, his reputation destroyed. Chloe, I heard, moved back to whatever town she'd crawled out of, disgraced and broke. They had to pay back every cent for the wedding. The venue, the caterer, the flowers, the band. And, most satisfyingly of all, the full retail price of my wedding dress and all 8 of the bridesmaid dresses. I didn't do it for the money. I had the money. I did it for the principle. I did it because they didn't just break my heart, they tried to steal my future, and they did it with a smile. They had treated me like a means to an end, an obstacle to be managed. I just wanted them to understand that I was not a stepping stone. I was a goddamn mountain. But victory didn't feel the way I thought it would. There was no triumphant elation.
Nora iches joy.
When the final settlement papers were signed, I just felt tired. I had spent so long fueling myself with rage. It was like I had forgotten how to run on anything else. And now that it was over, there was just a profound, aching emptiness. I sold the boutique. I couldn't stand the thought of being surrounded by other people's happy endings. I packed up the apartment, getting rid of everything that reminded me of him, of them, of the life I thought I was building. I was erasing a ghost. One evening, I found myself sitting on the floor of my empty living room, surrounded by boxes. The only thing left on the wall was the faint outline of where our photo used to hang. And I finally allowed myself to cry. I didn't cry for him. I didn't cry for the betrayal. I cried for the woman I used to be. The trusting, optimistic, slightly naive woman who believed in fairy tales because she spent her life creating them. She was gone. The betrayal hadn't just ended a relationship, it had killed a part of me, and I needed to mourn her. I cried for a long time, a deep, gut-wrenching sob that shook my entire body. It was the grief I had been holding back for weeks, the pain I had buried under layers of anger and meticulous planning. And when it was over, when there were no tears left, I felt that clean, quiet emptiness again. But this time it felt different. It didn't feel like a void. It felt like a blank page. A fresh start. I took the settlement money, all of it, and I bought a small cottage by the sea, 3 states away, in a town where no one knew my name or my story. I started designing again, but not wedding dresses. I designed clothes for real women. Clothes for running errands, for walking on the beach, for sitting in a garden with a good book. Clothes for living in. The rage is gone now. Most days. It's been replaced by a quiet strength I never knew I had. I learned that trust, once shattered, is a hard thing to rebuild. But the most important person to trust is yourself. I learned to listen to that small, quiet voice inside, the one that had whispered that something was wrong, the one I had ignored in my desperate desire for a happy ending. I still have the burner phone. It's in a box in the back of my closet. Sometimes I think about throwing it away, but I can't. It's a reminder, not of the betrayal, but of my own resilience. It's the artifact of the moment I stopped being a victim in someone else's story and became the hero of my own. My wedding day wasn't the end of a fairy tale. It was the beginning of my reality. A reality that is messy and complicated and sometimes lonely, but it is real. And it is mine. This wasn't the wedding day I dreamed of, but it was the day I took my life back. If this story hit close to home, I'd love to hear your version. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these to life.